Step 3. Assessing your financial situation. In order to accurately assess your financial situation, all the following financial information should be made ready available. For example, your liquid assets. This includes your bank deposits, current accounts, and fixed deposits. Your investment assets. This includes your brokerage statements, CPF statement, insurance policy statements, and average HDB prices, which you can find out more from the HDB website or the URA website. Personal assets. For example, your car. You can get an approximate value of your car, refer to one motoring website, or engage a professional appraisal. For example, for the paintings that you acquire or for the antiques that you acquire. Liabilities. This includes your mortgage statements, bank loan statements, and income tax statements. The more detailed your financial data, the more accurate your financial situation can be assessed. Case study. We will now look at a case study. Shown here are financial data for Mr. and Mrs. James Tan. Based on the financial data, we can calculate the following. Basic liquidity ratio. Mr. James Tan has a basic liquidity ratio of 1.92 months. Mrs. James Tan has a basic liquidity ratio of 23.33 months. Based on the guidelines of having 3 to 6 months of emergency savings, Mr. James Tan has too little emergency funds. He could work towards improving his basic liquidity ratio. Mrs. James Tan has too much in liquid assets and can benefit by investing some of these funds in order to get better returns in accordance with her risk profile. Savings ratio. Mr. James Tan has a savings ratio of 7.14%. Mrs. James Tan has a savings ratio of 25%. Based on the guidelines, Mr. James Tan could improve by saving a little bit more. Non-mortgage debt service ratio. Mr. James Tan has a non-mortgage debt service ratio of 17.86%. Mrs. James Tan has a non-mortgage debt service ratio of 13.75%. Mr. James Tan's non-mortgage debt service ratio is slightly above the recommended ratio, while Mrs. James Tan is slightly below the recommended ratio of 15%. They may want to caution against incurring further more non-mortgage debt. In addition, they may want to clear off some of these debts to avoid paying extra interest. Mortgage servicing ratio. Mr. James Tan has a mortgage servicing ratio of 22.86%. Mrs. James Tan has a mortgage servicing ratio of 0% because she doesn't have a home mortgage. Both ratios are within guidelines. Net worth. After calculations, Mr. James Tan has a net worth of $380,000 and Mrs. James Tan has a net worth of $91,500. By understanding your financial net worth, you can look into improving your financial position and you could have a snapshot if you might be moving towards negative net worth. In conclusion, in order to discover and assess our financial position, we have to analyze our net cash flow position, our net worth, and financial ratios. We need to take note that we need to analyze them collectively, not individually. Because what happens if we are retrenched? Our salary is affected. And what happens if our spouse loses her job? Or you loses your job? Unforeseen circumstances takes place. How will it affect you? How will it affect your family? Understanding our financial situation will help us make informed choices.